A reading from Psalm 95. O come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise to him with songs of praise. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hands are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountains are his also. The sea is his, for he made it, and the dry land, which his hands have formed. Amen. So, miracles. Some of you might think it was a miracle you got here. It was a little icy driving today. We're thankful for Eric having made it safely as well on this slick morning. I'll tell you, it's a miracle this sermon ever got done. This, I think, is like the 15th revision. I just keep printing it out and changing things. We had some sickness in our house this week, and so it was a bit of a task to get this done. Miracles seem to be the theme of the day, listening to our stories. And I'll give you the definition from Merriam-Webster. Two definitions of miracles. One, miracle is an extraordinary event manifesting divine intervention in human affairs. Second definition says an extremely outstanding or unusual event, thing, or accomplishment. Miracles. I'll tell you, too, that if you play Words with Friends, miracle is worth 14 points, so there you go. A little help for you. This miracle business is pretty complex. In today's gospel reading, two miraculous stories are told. One details the feeding of the 5,000 men, plus women and children, who've gathered around Jesus. It is a story found in all four Gospels. It must be pretty important. The first part of the second story that Grace read for us is found in three Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, and John. It's important as well. We hear about Jesus walking on the water. Miracles. Now, I've been reading a lot of back and forth about these biblical miracles and what we might say about them. In one corner, we have capital M, the big miracle. Big miracles insists on the absolute, irrefutable, it happened just like it says, view of the Bible's account. Bam! Jesus took fish and bread meant to feed a few and generated a feast. Food for thousands. Take that. Big M's take preserves the wonder of the event, making the improbable possible. That is Jesus' power. Now, in the other corner of the miracle debate is lowercase m. Lowercase says, wait a minute, big M, wait a minute. The text says Jesus took 5 loaves and 2 fish, gave thanks, and distributed the pieces. Distributing, big M, that's the question. Might not the people, shocked that Jesus and the disciples were willing to share their own meager resource, have peeked in their basket and found that with careful rationing, a bite to eat for their neighbor would be enough to fill everyone's stomach? Take that, lowercase, invites an interpretation of the event, the invitation to radical sharing. This is where Jesus' power is found. Well, still making the improbable possible, I say, but in a different way. Amy Hunter, a poet and a lay associate for spiritual formation at All Saints Episcopal Church in Massachusetts, tells the story of a classmate who defined faith as stepping out of airplanes, knowing that God will catch you. Yes, miracles. Amy continues, my response was that surely God had better things to do than catch folks silly enough to step out of airplanes. Boo, forget the miracle. How do you feel about the miracle business? Now, I'm not going to make you raise your hands like Pastor David did the past few weeks, but think about it. How do you feel about miracles? What about that Jesus walking on the water? Did he really skim across the surface? Or was he sandbarring it, walking in the shallow while the disciples bobbed around in the drop-off? You can spend hours on this debate, hours reading commentaries and interpretations and theology. This is most certainly true. But as the vast internet universe sucked me in and spit me out, a thought occurred. That occasionally happens to me, a thought, a miracle. No matter where you lie on the big M or the lowercase m continuum, one point remains. In these stories, something happened. Brilliant. Something happened on that beach. Something happened in the water during the storm. Something worth noting. Maybe because it was so big and strange, no one could explain it away. Or maybe because it upended the conventional wisdom of the day, commonly held notions of how humans normally behave with one another. Something happened, and this is what I think the point of these stories are, and the people experienced it together. Let me share with you a slightly different take on the last part of our gospel story. Barbara Brown Taylor is a preacher who often encourages me to explore the road less traveled, and she wrote a sermon that focused on Peter. She writes, the real point of this part of the gospel lesson is not Jesus again performing another miracle. It is Peter failing to see the miracle was occurring in the boat, not outside in the waves. When Jesus identified himself to the disciples in the storm, only Peter raised a question and required a sign. The rest of the disciples apparently had enough faith in Jesus to take him at his word and stay in the boat and keep rowing until Jesus could get to them. Now, we usually hear Jesus' words, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" as, "Peter, if you'd had more faith, you could have kept walking on the water." It never occurs to us that Jesus might have been saying, "Peter, if you'd had more faith, you would have stayed in the boat, helping the others." This reading turns the spotlight away from Peter's brief stroll and big splash and puts the focus on the miraculous understanding that Jesus' followers belong together with one another in the boat. Did you notice that Jesus does not do miracles alone? He doesn't disappear behind a big rock and emerge, voila, with tons of food. He isn't hanging 10 on the lake when the disciples spy him. He walks out because he's concerned. They haven't yet made it to the other side, and they seem to need assistance. Once everyone is back in the boat, the wind ceases. Now, St. John witnesses these kinds of miracles, well, on a weekly basis. I call this week's miracle, "It takes a village to move a freezer." We've been rearranging our space here at St. John. Ben moved his youth and family office to the lower level of the education wing. He did this so that Christ Cupboard could take up residence in a space that's separate from our main office, yet close enough to provide practical assistance. A minor miracle, I add, of staff communication and flexibility all by itself. But there's more. St. John is blessed to be in partnership with Second Harvest, which is an organization that augments the already generous donations of food and personal items given to Christ Cupboard by members of this congregation. We have a huge, this is my word, huge honking freezer, compliments of Second Harvest. A huge honking freezer that was not going to fit through the doorway of Ben's former office. Yikes. It's a big problem. Linda Bain was never going to move that thing by herself. Nor Carol, nor Ben, myself, any of us all alone. Not even Pastor David and Pastor Dom, throwing their vast theological knowledge and ecclesiastical experience around, was going to move the freezer. We were in need of something. And you know what? We got something. Our custodian, Jay, his buddy, Pork, Ben, Carol, and Linda, working together, took the freezer apart, moved it piece by piece. There were tools involved, I don't even understand. They moved it into the next room, assembled it, and plugged it in, and guess what? I'm hoping it worked. Linda, did it work? It did. It did work. Whew, because that would just ruin my sermon. Miracle. Big M? Lowercase? Both and? Maybe the miracle continues to be, and all ate and were filled. And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. We all together. The longer I live, the more I know that ours is a one another faith. In a world that seems to prize individual achievement, we step the other way and insist, no, many hands. It takes many hands to lift the heavy weight. In the Bible, life with God is life in community, in the boat, miraculously with one another. The Bible has a long list of one another's. Love one another, forgive one another, bear with one another, pray for one another, wait, honor. The long list of one another's reminds us that we belong in a community of faith with one another in the church. Will we hurt one another? Yes. Become angry at times. But as flawed and limited as the church is, there are wonders of grace that happen here that do not happen anywhere else, in the boat together where we belong. Chuck Poole writes of an interview conducted with a retiring pastor, and this pastor quoted his wife as he reflected on his love of the church. His wife said, "Even if we woke up Monday morning and discovered that miracles don't exist and perhaps God's gone, we'd still get up Sunday morning, get dressed, and go to church because we need those people that much." It's true. We do. We need one another. We belong in the boat. Amen.